All right, good evening. We'll call this meeting to order for the January 11th, 2024 Apple Valley City Council meeting. Welcome, everyone. As your items are called this evening, please come forward to speak. With that, we will start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Excuse me. I would like everyone to rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item is to approve the agenda. And Tom, do we have any changes this evening?
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. Yes, we don't have any additional items to add, but we would like to suggest on your regular agenda, we do have an applicant in the audience for item 5B, and just for the convenience of that applicant, we'd like to move that as the first item under regular agenda. So if we could swap item 5A and 5B, that would be recommended.
Sounds good. Do we have a motion to approve with those items swapped?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Grendall, a second from Councilmember Bergman. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda carries. Next item is our audience participation portion. This is for items not on the regular agenda. Do we have anyone who would like to speak this evening? All right. Seeing no one, we'll close this section and move on to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion unless a council member or citizen would like to pull anything. Council members, any items to pull from consent? Our audience, any items? All right, we would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Melander. All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, consent. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5, which is 5B in your agenda. And Alex has this item, and that's an action on the ordinance amending Chapter 155 of the City Code, regulating signs in Plan Development 290 Zone 3. Also includes waiving of the second reading. I'll just throw it out here out front that I will be very light in my discussion on this evening. This evening we'll be abstaining from this item, and just for the good of the public and the why. I also work for Wings, and they're the applicant this evening, so we will abstain from the final vote.
Thank you, Mayor, for kicking it off. So the action before you this evening, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. This is the action that Council has recommended that the City Council act on. So we are looking for action on the ordinance amendment. And additionally, the Council may take an action with perhaps altered provisions of this ordinance if they so see fit. Again, this is recommending waiving the second reading. The applicant is Wings Financial. They're located at 14985 Glacier Avenue, prominent location in the northeast corner of Cedar Avenue and 42. Wings Credit Union had applied for a variance previously for this sign location, which is in the northwest corner of the site. I'll zoom in on that in a moment. The variance went to Planning Commission for 2 different meetings. Ultimately, due to the provisions of a variance, the Planning Commission was unable to recommend approval for the sign variance, but did seem open to additional discussions about the sign height and sign area for the proposed sign. At that time, they told staff to work with the applicant, and the application for amending Plan Development 290 Subzone 3 came forward. I'll detail a little bit more on PD 290 in a moment. So the sign location, if you aren't familiar with it, is at the northwest corner of the site at the intersection of Glacier Avenue and 147th Street West. PD 290 is one of the city's oldest zoning districts, perhaps one of the first, or most likely the first. It's actually significant in area and is in the northeast corner of Cedar Avenue and 42. And it goes all the way over to Galaxy Avenue with some of the bank property pieces there. Also includes the sites of Applebee's, Buffalo Wild Wings, etc. across from 147th. There is limited retail within this zone, and the city has really stuck to keeping this as an office area within the community. There have been a number of applications and users that have sought to come into the area over the years, and the city has really stuck to keeping our office orientation for this portion, particularly as it relates to being next to our office facilities and the county office facilities as well. Specifically in the center, you'll notice there's PD 290's Subzone 3. Staff worked with the applicant to specifically apply for a zoning amendment to this section, as that would only apply to the 6 properties you notice there. The 6 properties is a bit of a misnomer. It's only 3 buildings within the area. So there are only essentially 3 users affected. 2 of the users are owned by Wings Credit Union. Sorry, the financial comes to mind just with how long they had that. And then the second is the Commons 1 building, one of the oldest office facilities within the community. This is a photo of the existing sign. I'll get into a little bit more on this later, but one of the reasons why this is being changed is due to a rebranding by the company, and secondarily because of some roadway realignments that are occurring for 147th with a roundabout. They will affect the area of this sign, and therefore it is being seen as kind of an opportunity to update the sign and bring it with current branding. This is the proposed sign. The sign is 20 feet high and 80 square feet. So the red box around the right graphic shows how our ordinance reads the square foot needs to be measured. That creates a box around the whole thing. If you were to be able to take the 2 items separately, it would be around 69 square feet. That was where staff didn't have as much of an issue, and neither did the Planning Commission, with the area calculation, as simply by the way that our ordinance reads, it was going to calculate larger. For context, limited business and office zones allow 8-foot maximum height and either 40 square feet for a single tenant or 60 square feet for a multi-tenant building. I noted that there were some changes proposed to 147th. The realignment is going to be affected. It will affect the existing sign. And the proposed sign, the reason we've included this graphic, which was created in conjunction with the property owner and our city engineer, was to show that a proposed sign can fit on the property after the realignment occurs. It will meet the 13-foot required setback, and to essentially find a final location for what that sign would be after that realignment occurs. I'm not going to go through all the details of this. It's included within your packet. Essentially, what staff was attempting to do here was compile a table of our neighboring communities, both in office and in retail zones, and their sign heights and areas. One major piece of note that I do want to point out with the table is the retail zoning is not for highway retail. There are a number of communities surrounding us that have highway retail zones where those signs are significantly taller in size and area. That is due to the speed of the adjacent roadways. In the packet, I did go through a little bit more on the detail and the sign principles of kind of going through when you're adjacent to high-speed roadways, you need larger, bigger, taller signs so that users know how to interact with them and where to go. If there are questions about the table, happy to answer them at the end. But for the moment, this is meant to be more illustrative for the council. The proposed amendment that is before you this evening is for a 20-foot high, 80 square foot sign, which is what the applicant had sought. When the Planning Commission reviewed this at their public hearing on December 20th, they had stated some discomfort with the 20-foot height. They went specifically and made a motion for a 14-foot maximum height and 80 square feet. Similar to the action the council has this evening, our city attorney had advised that they needed to act on that original application, have a denial, and then could make a motion on a further action. There were 4 of 7 planning commissioners present, and they voted unanimously to recommend denial and then unanimously to recommend the 14 feet as the maximum height. All were comfortable with the 80 square feet. I'm sorry, I do want to go back on one note with that. One of the reasons that they listed on that is they did not feel that the maximum height of 20 feet was in line with the pedestrian nature of the zone. Our highest signs in town are at 24 feet in height, and at the same time, they did want to respect the campus that Wings has built within the community, and therefore allow something larger than the average limited business zone, since this did only affect that planned development. So this evening, that concludes where I have prepared. I have other pieces of information if the City Council would like to look at any of the graphics that the Planning Commission did. I believe the applicant is present with their own presentation as well. I do want to reiterate the council has asked that the council act on the application as submitted, and then if that passes, discussion is done. If the action were to be denied, then they could propose something else, and the applicant would need to concur with that finding. With that, if there are any questions.
Thanks. Let's start with questions from Alex, and then we'll move on to the applicant. Ruth?
Alex, were there ever any public comments?
Mayor Huba, Councilmember Grendel, there were no public comments.
No public comments against the,
Any other questions for Alex? If not, invite Tom forward and he can give his presentation. So, you just mind stating your name for the record so Pam can record it as if I don't know who you are. But
My name is Tom Schenke. I'm Vice President of Facilities and Administration for Wings Financial Credit Union. And thank you for hearing us tonight. I really didn't have a lot from a presentation standpoint. Basically, there's two things I wanted to accomplish. Is kind of give you a little history as to how we got to where we're at today relative to the 20-foot sign request that we're asking for, and where we're looking to get to. So currently, the sign that we're looking to get to, or that we are proposing, is an offshoot of our newest designs. This was our newest design built in Maple Grove, right in the heart of the city up there in 2018. This is Lakeville. This is the first time that we used the monument sign design. This was built in 2019. That sign is just over 25 feet. This is Northfield, Minnesota. We're in a Target outlot there. Again, I'm just basically showing you this is the design of the sign that we've been using in all of our newest locations. Northfield was built in 2020. This is Baxter, Minnesota. That is a 40-foot tall pylon sign. Rochester, Minnesota, 40-foot tall pylon sign. Otsego, Minnesota, we changed out the sign. This is again a 25-foot sign. Thief River Falls, Minnesota, 20-foot. And then our newest sign at our 15025 Glacier Mortgage Building, which is within ordinance, and I believe that's 8-foot tall. One of the reasons that we requested 20 feet, and it goes back to the engineering of this location once the new roundabout comes to a conclusion or starts to be built. I've been working with Brandon for almost 3 years now relative to this project, adjusting our lot lines, how it's going to impact our parking lots, and that sort of thing. And Brandon came back to us and said, hey, we got some bad news from the state of Minnesota. The roundabout has to get significantly bigger because the regulations changed, which means we're going to have to cut off a lot of that corner. And when they did that, Brandon, and his first comments to me was, we're probably going to lose most of that berm. So the berm that the sign is sitting on, which puts it at about 4 feet above grade, would go away. Given that, and us wanting to have a good impact sign there, we said 20 feet would be what we would want to have. We put forward our application for a variance, didn't realize that the variance process was prohibitive for us to get a variance through Planning Commission, came back with the zoning change to Planning Commission, and basically we were under the impression that we had, we could only ask for the 20 feet, left the Planning Commission with the 14-foot and 80 square foot recommendation. We're still not sure what's going to happen with this berm. Right now, I believe personally that if we were able to come away from here with the council saying, we're not going to approve 20 feet, we're going to approve, but coming back and saying we'll approve 16 feet with the 80 square foot sign, I think Wings would be more than happy with that. And that's really the gist of our presentation.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Any questions? Ruth, go ahead.
so Tom, there's going to be no advertising on it or anything? It's just kind of a,
No, there'll be an electronic reader board portion of the sign, so depends on how you define advertising. I mean, we probably will have CD rates on there and loan rates and things like that from time to time, would be
Like-
my guess.
About what percentage of the sign does the reader board?
I think it's about 50/50. I can go right to it. This
you
is
go.
the 16-foot sign shown on that berm. And it's less than 50/50, so it's probably, of the 80 square feet that's shown there, it's probably, just looking at it right here, it's probably somewhere around 30.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom?
Um,
Councilmember Lander, go ahead.
Clarification. Alex, you said there's only 3 buildings in this zone, and the wing zone's 2 of them? And it's a PD?
Mayor Hoopa, Councilmember Melander, that is correct. The subzone 3 only has 3 properties. PD 290 is a larger zone, plan development, but the reason why we worked with the applicant to purposely apply for an amendment to just subzone 3 would be to limit that impact so that it could emphasize that campus style.
Because I know we have to be sensitive about setting a precedent if we do something different with signage here, that it could turn out to be somebody else on the other side of town could put up a sign.
Right.
But this is just limited to these 3 parcels. So if we were accommodating to what Wings would like to have, we're not making some precedent that's going to bite us in the rear later.
A legal precedent, certainly not, no, because of that plan development piece. Whether others may have that same ask because of that, your guess is as good as mine on that.
Okay.
Councilmember Goodwin?
Thank you, Mayor. Now, my understanding is that you're looking for 20. The Planning Commission thought 14, but you just said you'd be very acceptable of a compromise of 16 feet?
Absolutely.
Sounds
And,
sweet.
the 20 ask was based on that berm going away and being flat.
Well, it sounds like a good compromise to me. So how do we make this motion? We got to,
Let's, Councilmember Bergman stalls the question. We need to act on the motion. We need to take a motion on what's presented. Depending on that action, if that passes the 20, we're done.
yeah.
If it fails, then we would go back and take a motion for a different number. Councilmember Bergman.
Thanks, Mayor. To Councilmember Melander's comment, I did have that same concern about a precedent being stated or said. Alex and Benetti confirmed that, no, this is all by itself. The other thing that's different from this and anything else that we have is, A, the building's really tall. I'll just use that as one example, is very tall. But the other thing I take away from it is, one thing I think that's really cool about this is this corporation made it a point to make it a campus. It's not one individual building, and they put, there's 3 buildings on there, but it's done in a campus atmosphere rather than just one building. So I did have those concerns.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's just move on to the action items, which is the, Alex, do you want to just pop that back up, if you don't mind? Thank you. So the action is the one in front of us, just to paraphrase, which is to allow the installation of a freestanding ground sign with a maximum height of 20 feet and a total sign area not to exceed 80 square feet. And that should also recommend waiving the second reading. So that's the motion we're looking for, to either approve or deny.
Mayor, I'd make a recommendation to deny and recommend waiving the second reading.
I'll second the motion.
Second,
All right, so we have a motion from Councilmember Bergman and a second from Councilmember
Randall.
Grendel to deny the 20-foot sign as presented in front of us. Is that correct? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that motion to deny carries. I'll abstain from that one. We would entertain a motion for a different height. If someone has a suggestion.
Did you
Either one.
raised his hand, so.
Councilmember Goodwin, we'll defer, go to you.
Well, I'd make a recommendation that we change the 20 to 16. The gentleman seems to be fine with that, so that's fine.
So is that a motion?
Yes, that's a motion.
Motion for 16 feet and 80 square feet,
That's correct.
and also waiving the second reading?
Yes.
Is that the motion?
I'll second the motion.
We have a second on that motion. Tom, would you mind coming back up, because we want to make sure we have your agreement
Right.
on that before we take action?
You want something changed?
Yes, Wings is in agreement with that. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
thank you, thank you. Staff, you light on anything else, or we cover it? I just want to make sure we get this right, so we don't have to do it again, and we don't hold something up here.
We're fine.
We're good? All right, so we have a motion in front of us. Pam, do we document who first? Thank you. Motion in front of us, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 And opposed? So that carries for 16 feet, just to be clear. All right, and I'll abstain from that one. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tom, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna jump us back to 5A, so we don't forget that one, because wouldn't that be disappointing if we forgot the other half of Alex's work? Which is to pass an ordinance amending chapter 154 of the city code regulating signs, and this also would be recommending waiving a second reading.
This one will be a little bit more straightforward. So the action requested this evening is to pass an ordinance amending chapter 154 of the city ordinance and recommend waiving the second reading. So this ordinance amendment was initiated by staff. There are essentially three parts to it. I'm going to introduce each one individually by starting off with the current ordinance and then going into the proposed changes. The Planning Commission did review these ordinance changes, even though sign ordinance amendments are not required to go before the Planning Commission. But as a standard practice, we bring them there. They were recommended unanimously. So the first is our current ordinance has that signs above the first floor must be on buildings 4 stories or more. And those who are aware with the city of Apple Valley know that we have quite a few buildings that are 2 and 3 story. Where staff has been able to interpret around that ordinance is when we have had the change out of signs, a replacement, we've allowed the sign permit to go through. The issue right now is that we are facing 2 different users, the former Eagle Valley Bank and Health Partners that are coming forward that are greater than 1 story but not 4 stories. Looking back, you can debate the intent of this 4-story piece at the time, but staff chose, rather than having a single applicant come forward with this request, knowing that this is something that we should probably correct in our code, and we had multiple users, to proactively move forward and change the ordinance. Working with the city attorney, we've done 2 different things with this. The first is to adjust the sign height to the highest floor when above the first. So that will allow, if the city were to have 6 stories, 5 stories, or 3 stories and 2 stories, it's always going to be the highest story that the sign must be on. The goal with this was to prevent having signs on multiple different stories, so the sign is required on that top story. Additionally, we went from 2 signs, because, again, for an unknown reason, the ordinance only limited those buildings to 2 signs per building. With most other provisions in our sign ordinance on any single-story building, we would allow you to have up to 4 signs on the building, so we altered that. We did state explicitly the signs may not be placed on the same side as the building. Signs may not cover more than 40% of the width of the building. And then to cover a issue with the entrance of the building, we also added in a provision where identification signs could be up to 8 square feet within 10 feet of the entrances, but no more than 4 foot above those entrances, to try to prevent people from placing a larger 8 square foot sign on that slightly above the first story. With this intent is to allow users to know which doors they're supposed to be entering in these larger buildings for specifically those multi-tenant buildings. The second piece is we've long had a directional sign code that since my time here, we've had some concern over from particularly some of our industrial users. So our current code allows for directional signs on a site to be no more than 4 and no more than 2 square feet each. The issue has come in with some of our most recent industrial sites that they're using larger box trucks, they're using larger vehicles, and they can't see a 2 square foot sign. Additionally, for those sites like Scannell that have completely screened in areas, or Dix Valley Service that have completely screened in areas where no one else can see the sign, we found that we needed to potentially change the ordinance to allow for some additional signage in there where they are not intended for that off-site view. The other small part to this, while we were at it, is there has been a court case that found that we have to have content neutrality, and directional signs specifically stated that they cannot bear any advertising information. That's not content neutral, so we did remove that provision. So the new ordinance increases their sign size consistent with the other identification signs to 8 square feet, trying to keep consistent numbers between things. Specifically, does not limit the number of these directional signs when they are for the purpose of directing vehicular or pedestrian traffic, and when they are for internal operations and cannot be seen. And then for the final part under the definitions, remove that content portion. The final piece is the really easy one. We've been going through a couple of different variances recently, and if you look at section F, it has an A or a B, and then immediately went into a 1 and a 2. This likely happened when we changed from the old black book to our current, is a typographical error, essentially. Very easy fix, but while we're in the sign ordinance, a good cleanup item to bring forward. So it's switched to the 1 and the 2 versus the A and the B. With that, I stand for any questions.
Questions for Alex? You could have had 25 people look at that. They all would have missed the A and the B. So,
And I commend our city attorney.
yep. All right, are there any questions for Alex? If not, we'll take a motion to pass the ordinance amending chapter 154 of city code and waiving the second reading.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that item passes. The next item is from Pam, and that is a less happy item, and that is to accept the resignation of a planning commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Planning Commissioner Keith Diekmann notified the city of his resignation from the Planning Commission, and staff suggests formal acceptance of Mr. Diekmann's resignation at this time. This will create a vacancy in the 3-year term expiring March 1st, 2026. Council may wish to extend an invitation to individuals interested in serving on the Planning Commission to submit an application to the city clerk by Friday, February 16th. For our listening audience who may be interested in volunteering to serve on the Planning Commission, the 7-member Planning Commission is a standing committee with the full power and responsibility to investigate issues relating to planning and land use on behalf of the City Council. The Planning Commission discusses and evaluates development and building proposals, conditional use permit applications, variance requests, proposed changes to the comprehensive plan or zoning map, and related planning issues. It conducts public hearings when necessary and votes on recommendations, which are then sent to the Planning Commission, or to the City Council. The Planning Commission meets the first and third Wednesdays of the month, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Center, and members must be residents of Apple Valley to serve on this committee. The application is on the city's website. If the City Council is ready to start the process for filling this vacancy, staff suggests the council make a motion accepting Mr. Diekmann's resignation from the Planning Commission, directing staff to post that vacancy, and then inviting individuals interested in serving on the Planning Commission to submit an application to the city clerk by February 16th. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so are there any questions for Pam? We'll start with Councilmember Grendel.
Thank you. First, like you said earlier, contributions that Keith has made to this city are just incredible, and I was disappointed to see this in our packet tonight. How many years did Keith serve? Do we know?
20 roughly.
20?
Mr. Mayor, I believe the number I believe he mentioned was over 20 years, approximately.
Thank you, Keith, and I don't know, if
Absolutely.
we need a motion to open it up for new applicants?
So Councilmember Grendel has a motion to accept the resignation and open up applications. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Bergman, and Councilmember Melander had some comments. If you want to,
I'd like
feel
to.
free to do those before we take the vote.
We had a an award ceremony of sorts when our dear departed Tim Burke finally resigned the planning commission a couple of years back. And Tim was another terrific member. I served with both of those gentlemen for quite some time on planning. And Keith is a special kind of guy. He's an executive position with a large company. He's traveling a lot. He's got a family. He's still found time to give 20 years of thoughtful, careful, considered service to the city, which is just terrific. And I like Keith a lot personally, and he sure has done a great job for the city. I would suggest that at a minimum we do some sort of a thank you letter or certificate sort of thing for his service, and work out whether he can make it here or not, but to see that he gets that, because he certainly does.
Nice to recognize him in person if we can. Yep. Thank you, Tom.
And thanks, Keith, if you're watching.
Councilmember Goodwin.
Well, my comments are along the same lines as Councilmember Grindle and Councilmember Melander. 20 years, wow, that's something. Yeah, if we could do something, some kind of a nice,
Something.
yeah, I forgot what we did for Mr. Burke.
We had a nice certificate, and I think we did a declaration, didn't we?
I don't recall, but we can figure it out. You're really testing my
Some
memory on that one.
highfalutin language delivered by the mayor himself.
Sure.
There you go.
There you go.
Mayor and highfalutin language.
Yeah, those don't go together very often. So, Councilmember Bergman.
Thanks, Mayor. The same comments that everybody else has made up here. Keith did an outstanding job, very level-headed, very considerate, to the point, easy to understand. When things were going a little astray, I was going to call him Commissioner. Councilmember Melander knew that Keith would come through and make it easy for everybody to understand, and they'd come to a consensus some way or the other. So, Keith, best of luck and continued success.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And again, thank you, Keith, for the years of service and the years of great service at that. So you'll be missed. Next item is to adopt a resolution appointing an acting mayor for 2024.
I'll make a motion that Councilmember Goodwin continues in that
Second.
very valuable seat.
We have a motion from Councilmember Goodwin and a second from Councilmember Grindall. Any objections? No objections?
No objection.
All right. Councilmember Goodwin, will you accept this before we take a
Well, I just want to know what the title is going to be. Is it going to be Mayor Pro Tem or Mayor Pretend?
You can call yourself whatever you like. We're going to call you acting mayor for the
Acting mayor.
purpose of this
Wow.
resolution. You can name yourself anything you like from there on out. We will not call Linda and ask her what to call you, however. So, we have a motion from Councilmember Bergman and a second from Councilmember Grindall. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Congratulations once again, Councilmember Goodwin. So,
Mayor Pretend.
Mayor Pretend. Staff updates. Tom, what do we have?
Mr. Mayor, just one tonight. We have a youth fishing derby coming up, sponsored by our police department, and I believe Deputy Chief Dahlstrom is going to share some information on that, let the community know about this fun event.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Mayor, council members, we just wanted to invite all the kids in the city and anybody else that you know that may be interested in coming out and fishing with the police department and a few partners that we've picked up along the way. Normally we're the fun police, but in this case we're just fun. So we're partnering with the Parks Department, Joe's Sporting Goods, the Fire Department, and Minnesota DNR to put on a kids ice fishing derby on Cobblestone Lake. It's going to be February 3rd from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. and we certainly invite any and all of you to come and put on your galoshes and have fun with us. Hopefully we have enough ice and the weather cooperates with us. But we've got a few fun things. We've got a fishing contest for the kids, so there'll be some prizes. Everybody that participates will have a chance to get some swag from the police department, and then fire has graciously offered to do a nice safety demonstration. So be good for folks that are in attendance to learn how to rescue themselves should they find themselves in the unfortunate circumstance of being in the water. And then the Minnesota DNR is actually going to do a little bit of fish biology for the kids and talk about Cobblestone Lake and what lives there and kind of how that lake continues to survive and why it's there. So kind of a fun event. So thank you for a couple minutes to advertise for us.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Council, are there any communication items? None? All right, we'll move on to the calendar of upcoming events, and our next regular city council meeting is Thursday, January 25th at 7 p.m. And a reminder that the city offices are closed on Monday, the 15th, in observance of Martin Luther King Day. Do we have a motion to approve the calendar?
So moved. Second.
Motion from Councilmember Bergman, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, calendar is approved. Next item is to convene in closed session under the labor negotiations exception to the open meeting law to discuss the AFSCME union negotiations. We have a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Grendel, a second from Councilmember Bergman. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that carries. We will reconvene across the hall in a few minutes and adjourn from there.